Hello, and welcome to the Sedgwick podcast, where we explore innovation shaping the future of claims administration and risk management. My name is Kimberly George, and I have the honor of serving as Sedgwick's Global Chief Brand Officer and host for today's conversation. Please be sure and hit the like button, as that helps share the podcast more broadly, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Today, our topic is leveraging AI in workers' compensation claims administration. AI and digital transformation afford us the opportunity to rethink claims processing, injured worker engagement, and the role of claims professionals involved within the process. Joining me today is Josephine Copeland, Sedgwick's Senior Vice President of Product Design and Strategy. Welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'm so excited to have this conversation today.
Let's start with you explaining your role and area of focus.
Certainly. So, as you said, I'm the product design and strategy for managed care. And really, when I think about that, think my role is about sitting at the intersection of innovation and practicality. So, how do we help Sedgwick's managed care solutions evolve to meet the needs of the future without creating a lot of noise and chaos for end users that might have to experience that AI? I'm really focusing on how do we leverage technology to improve the human experience so that our colleagues can do what they do best for injured workers. So that's really how I envision my role. And so I'm really, really excited to talk about all the things we're going to talk about today because innovation is moving so quickly, unlike anything that we've seen to date. So really, I think the conversation is timely.
Yeah, I think you have one of the most exciting roles at Sedgwick, not only because of your rich background in managed care and understanding claims, but this amazing time of transformation. So I'm super excited to have you on the podcast and for our audience to hear some of the amazing work you're doing and also how you're thinking about AI. So jumping straight in, what's our general philosophy around AI at Sedgwick?
So really our philosophy is that AI should amplify humans. It's not to replace them and definitely not to exhaust them. I was having a conversation with someone who we were talking about AI burnout because you hear the term AI, people are applying it to everything. And they said, yeah, people will put the term AI on anything that will stand still long enough. And I just thought that was so funny because I'll hear people talk about technology. Some of it's AI, some of it isn't. But because is sort of the buzzword today. That's what you hear a lot about. So, as we're talking about AI for Sedgwick, really the biggest benefit of AI is its speed and consistency. When you combine that with human empathy and judgment, that's really sort of the philosophy of Sedgwick is how do we bring the best of those two worlds together to deliver something really powerful in managing claims and recovery, because I specifically focus on managed care. So our approach isn't really, every AI is going to change everything and screaming that out. It's really, what if AI could handle all of those mundane tasks that you hate and give you 20 minutes back in your day? And that gets people super excited about AI and what AI can do for them in their day to day. And so that's really the philosophy. It's not the magic bullet. It really is how do you leverage it to get the best out of people to do again what they do best to support injured workers.
Yeah. And I do think when companies consider transformation, and Sedgwick recently announced our own chief transformation officer, what's critical is that we understand the business needs. And so in your role, Joe, being able to specifically address how to improve both for our colleagues, our client outcomes, and of course the injured worker, the whole process using AI. I think that's brilliant because having an enterprise solution is definitely key. But I think it's been really smart of Sedgwick to have roles such as yours embedded in the business. So that's really great. I
You raise a
appreciate you.
really you raise a really, really great point because, sometimes when we hear about AI in the industry or even outside of the industry, it's more a solution in search of a problem. And really, Sedgwick's approach with this, the chief transformation officer, and really all of the things that we hear when Sedgwick talks about AI, it's how do we use AI to create solutions for real world problems, not create a solution that's looking for something to solve. And I think that's so important because that's when people are just creating technology, whatever it is, AI, and then trying to figure out where to apply it, you're really not solving problems. You're
Hmm.
really just delivering some flashy AI that might sound good on paper, but doesn't really bring any value to the business. And so that's a great point and great call out, I think, for the listeners to say that it really is about how do you solve business problems.
Hmm. Thank you for that. Well said. Will you share some areas where AI is enhancing our business?
Oh, of course, and some of these I'm sure some of the listeners and viewers have heard about. So, medical record summarization is was probably our first foray into AI, or I should say the more modern version of AI because we've been doing AI for quite some time. But really, it is AI scanning complex or long medical records and then pulling out key insights for claim examiners and our clinicians. And so, instead of spending hours reviewing pages and pages, colleagues can get to the heart of the matter much more quickly. So medical record summarization has been a game changer for us. Another game changer has been what I call click here claim summarization. I know some people have called it the easy button, but I think that name has been taken. But really, this is probably one of the most popular tools internally. And what it does, it allows the user to click a button and get a claim summary with that one click. So AI will generate a snapshot of the claims history and then the key points. And that's a huge time saver. That's like, it might have taken me a day to get through all of these documents, kind of time saver. And so when you think about giving colleagues back that kind of time, it becomes really, really meaningful. And then enterprise wide, we've been using virtual assistants like Copilot. And that's within the entire ecosystem using AI to help colleagues craft communications, improve tone and sentiment so that we're making sure that when we do communicate, we are always being empathetic and the tone and the sentiment of our communications reflect that. And then it gives, every one of our colleagues sort of this digital assistant to help sit beside them as they're doing their day-to-day work. So across all of these areas, I would say the theme for us has been the same. How do we use AI to help our colleagues do their best work? And so, in addition to some of the things that we've built in managed care, leveraging and implementing some of those things in the day to day work life for our colleagues have been true game changers and time savers for us.
Yeah, and you mentioned the claim summarization button and the ease of that. What I love is that we'd included our clients to say, we're embarking on AI, we're big investors, we've got our medical summarization underway. What what do you need? And it was through their feedback that they said, boy, if we could have a button that would help us with claims reviews, and so now the benefit of our colleagues, as well as our customers, I think it's one of those lessons learned where bring your stakeholders in, let them have a voice. How can AI be used to bring efficiency, quality, consistency? And I'm happy you mentioned that one because I think it's a great example of lessons learned that what we think may help us may also benefit a customer, and really think of your ecosystem as you're going to deploy. So you're not just solving one issue, but maybe multiple at once.
Yeah, that's been how we've been leveraging sort of the voice of the customer and all the work that you've been doing. I know we're going to talk about some things that we've done in managed care specifically, and a large part of that was the work that you've done with our Sedgwick client communications and getting their voice early before we're far down the path. And so, to your point, getting that voice of the customer is so critical because there are things that we're doing that could have benefits even outside of Sedgwick colleagues, but still helps support the business. So yeah, that's the client is a key stakeholder in all of this as well.
Well, then let's jump right in. Let's talk about managed care and at a high level how AI has supported recent innovations for our nurses and employee care.
Yes, so that I'm going to geek out a little bit because this is the one I get super excited about. We've seen a lot of impact in managed care, and I think the one that I'm most excited about is our AI care guidance predictive model. And essentially, that's an early identification predictive model to identify when is the right time to deploy a clinical resource on a claim. And Cedric has had AI predictive modeling for case management for quite some time, but we modified it because now we have the ability to look at unstructured data where, old AI would not allow you to do that. And for those of you who aren't aware, unstructured data would be like notes, medical notes from the claims examiner, medical notes summaries from the doctor, all that rich information, emails and communications with an injured worker, all that rich information that isn't necessarily in a table or as
Mm,
structured data. Now the model can consume and inform its prediction. And so that's super exciting. It runs every day. It used to be a much lengthier time because it's just, processing capacity was very different 10 years ago when AI was built for Sedgwick versus where it is right now. And so now it runs every day on a claim. So as the claim matures, as new information comes in, the model is consuming it. And it also is prescriptive. So it
mhm,
doesn't just say, hey, here's a claim that you might want a clinician on. It will say, hey, this is the type of clinician you might want to put on that particular claim. And so it identifies quickly the right resource or makes a recommendation for it. And then it also outlines why the model is making that recommendation. And so the model is consuming all of this information, making a recommendation on what type of resource to use and why that recommendation is being made in the model. And now a human has fast and easy access to that information so that then they can make a decision on, is it the right time to put a clinician and is that the right resource? So not taking the human out of the loop, but really leveraging AI and technology to get information to claims examiners more quickly so that they can make
mhm.
faster decisions to help an injured worker's recovery. And so this has been an exciting endeavor for us in managed care. And it's just been leaps and bounds in terms of where we were with our predictive model to where we are today.
Yeah, fantastic. What went well in the development process?
So thankfully, a lot went right. I think the very, I think the very first thing that went really well is the collaboration. So we did not sort of, go in a lab, have our data science team go in a lab and then unveil it to us, and we were grateful. It really was about a true partnership between data science, claims operations, and clinical operations, and my team in product design. And so that collaboration was key because no one, not any one of those groups could have done it as successfully as we did as a partnership. And then to your point around the clients, we talked to clients about what we were building and we got their feedback and we got their thoughts and we actually got buy-in for some pilot clients before we actually went live across the board. And so I think collaboration was probably the first thing that we did really, really well and is what led us to be as successful as we were. We had a hypothesis, and we knew that it would have to be iterative to figure out could we prove the hypothesis that we started with? And so the data science team interviewed a lot of different people. They built a model, we piloted it, we tested it, we refined it again, tested it, refined it again. And so there was a lot of um, iterations to getting to where we finally landed with the model. And so understanding going in that it wasn't going to be perfect on day one, and it may not even be perfect at week 6, but we were committed to it and got to something that was really, really exciting. And then the last thing I would say is keeping humans in the loop. You
Mm.
never want AI to be relied on solely. You still need human judgment in the middle of it in some part of the process. And so collaboration, iteration, and keeping humans in the loop are the things that were really successful in building that AI care guidance model.
So I have a question. When I think about nurse case management, at Sedgwick, clients often have very strong opinions about when to put a nurse on, when not to, and there's this balance of making sure that we serve our customers in a way they want the product delivered, but also to help them see the value um, in a way that is meaningful to them on effectiveness, speed through the treatment process, quality, et cetera. So, how did you go about thinking through that, knowing the client variations we have, variation in expectations, maybe?
So the great news is the importance of that collaboration was key because that came out very clearly. So when we were developing the model, we built some flexibility to accommodate different clients' perspectives around when to use case management and when not to.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way the model works is it gives the claim a score based on the likelihood of when a claim should have a clinical intervention. Clients get to decide, what their threshold is for when to engage a clinician and when not to engage. And so that flexibility was something that we heard early on in those interviews, and we heard in those client discussions when we talked about what we were building with AI care guidance. The beauty part is when they have this objective score, sometimes their perspectives change a little bit because before the identification of when a claim should go to a nurse could be as simplistic as send all backs, all back injuries. Well, all back injuries don't necessarily need a clinician. And so that might be too far, swinging the pendulum too far one way. And the other is, I want to approve every referral. And that might be swinging the pendulum too far the other way. And so by giving them this objective score and this information that says, here is why the model thinks you should have a nurse, it did um, give clients more confidence in how we were identifying and being stewards of the resources that get applied to their claims. And so I think that's why it was met after we ran a pilot for a year and then rolled it out to the rest of the book. And so I think that's why they were so receptive to it
Mm-hmm.
because there was a level of credibility and confidence that they could see because it was more tangible around how decisions were being made.
Yeah, great lesson learned for those embarking on transformation in their processes. Voice of the customer, those you think may not like this solution, those that you think will buy in, allowing them to have that voice. And then, as you said, it being iterative. So, not throwing it all out at once, but really being very intentional and thoughtful. That's great feedback for our audience.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
it was again, it was such I get so excited about it, and if anybody's ever heard me talk about it, they know this is like the most exciting thing I think that I've done in my career because what we put together again was just every voice represented in the room, and that's why I
Hmm.
think it was so um,
Mhm.
important and so successful. And it also wasn't innovation for innovation's sake. I mean, it really was. We think that if we get a nurse on a claim at a very particular time, that clinician can have the greatest impact on an injured worker's recovery. Like that is
Yeah.
meaningful and profound because you can change someone's life by helping them get better faster. And so it wasn't just let's build a predictive model so we can say we have one. It was let's build something that's going to really drive results for our customers and impact injured workers. So very exciting.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time out in industry, as you know, and chief transformation officers often talk about a failure, a learning with a failure. And it's often around not having alignment with your stakeholders and execution. And so I think what you just described really is having the alignment with execution so that all those stakeholders you'd brought to the table understood radical transparency, as I say often, because you just can't communicate enough through these changes, both with what's working, what steps you're at now, and what's to come next. So, I know we learned a lot from that and are expanding upon the work you started with Voice of the Customer, now having Voice of the Customer and other aspects of tech development. So kudos to you because you really were able to make a significant shift in the way Sedgwick's engaging customers with tech. But let's now shift to what we've learned post implementation.
Yeah, so we proved our hypothesis, which is yeah exciting for us. But again, the results we went in with the end in mind. So what were we going to measure to determine were we successful? And like I said, we weren't successful day one. The model didn't identify all the right things. We got to a place where at the end of the pilot, once we were ready to pilot, at the end of the pilot, we really looked at how quickly were claims being identified through the model and accepted, because the model can identify something that a human says no to. And so that does not, that's just administrative burden on someone. And so we wanted the model to become more accurate in terms of what gets accepted. And then what were the results for the claim? What was the results for total incurred? What was the medical utilization? And every metric imaginable that we identified as a point of success, we were able to prove that the model did better than other referral sources. And so that was super exciting. We saw lower medical costs because there was less utilization. So people they reached MMI or return to work faster. And so that reduced the medical costs. And then it also reduced total incurred because, again, people, fewer disability days, shorter claim duration. And so we found that early intervention, early identification and intervention by a clinician on the right claims really had meaningful impact for those pilot clients. And so, like I said, we rolled it out earlier this year for the rest of the clients, and we are seeing the same kinds of results for them. And so it's super exciting to be able to look back and say, what we built really did bring meaning and drive value for the organization and for injured workers, because we see it in the numbers. It wasn't just we have a hypothesis in this, and now we have a model. It's we have a hypothesis, we have a model, and the model proved the hypothesis, and it's super exciting. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
that's what we
As,
found.
Especially ROI in case management, value
Yeah.
in case management. This are, as you and I have been in this for a long time, it's a decades old, multiple decades old conversation. And so I know, having spoke with many of our clients that are using the model, that's been a great value to them. So now that AI care guidance is in full deployment, what's next for Joe and team?
Yeah, it's so funny. We always it's always someone called it a run-on sentence. So, okay, that's done. What do you do now? And so really we're always looking for how can we catch recovery risks sooner and then intervene. And so we are looking to expand the model to see if there are other use cases for it. So we focused primarily on telephonic and field case management, but can the model get more specific, like resiliency coaching? So, if there are barriers to recovery that the model can identify, are there coaches that we can deploy to help solve for those or help support and coach and motivate injured workers beyond that? We're building some specialized care pathways. One is a musculoskeletal or MSK care pathway. And so using the model to identify claims that should fall along specialized care pathways is something that we're also looking at. But we're also looking at, are there places we can leverage AI even outside of clinical? Is there AI that can be leveraged in the bill review process? Is there AI that can be leveraged later on in the claim when it may not be medical, but there may be some return to work insights that we can get to help injured workers and employers understand the best path forward to bring someone back into the workplace? And so, finding recovery risk faster, and how do we give better support to injured workers and claims examiners in identifying the managed care tools and resources that are available to them, are all of the things that we're focused on. And our guiding principle is really, how do we use AI to help people feel more supported, to get better faster, and to really, when do we engage the right resource to help them navigate with confidence through some of the challenging moments that they're going to experience on their recovery journey. So we keep that in the forefront, and then we
Yeah.
decide where to go based on that.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. For our audience, I hope that you have been able to have some takeaways from the conversation today, thinking about how you bring transformation to your business from an enterprise level down to and throughout your businesses, making sure that your use case scenarios are meaningful to the stakeholders and that you bring all of them together for that joint unity to ensure, as we said earlier, that you have alignment with the execution, you have adoption by the employees, by your customers, and that you always keep the human in the loop. As we think about workers' compensation, we are here to help with the recovery of both health and productivity. And so keeping our patient, our injured worker at the center while bringing an experience to those handling the claim, I think we have more opportunity than we ever have before. And keep that voice of the customer at the center of your change. If you're building just internally, I think you'll end up finding that you missed an opportunity to truly build a product for the future. And Joe, you've been an amazing guest today. I not only appreciate the work you do here at Sedgwick, but your willingness to share and help our industry learn through your experiences. So thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate this was fun. Appreciate the conversation.
And to our audience, thank you for joining us today and listening to this episode of Sedgwick's podcast. Be sure and hit the like button on your way out and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, be well.